Okay, in part 2 of Flash Basics, we are going to create something very similar to our original, but we're going to let the computer do all the work for us, basically. We are only going to do about 10% of the work that we did before. So I'm going to make a new layer, and on layer 1, which is where my blue square is, this is frame by frame animation. So I'm going to rename this layer. I can either right click it and go to rename, or I can just double click it and then it'll come up with a way that we can rename. And I'm just going to name this F by F so that we know it's frame by frame animation. And then I'm going to make a new layer, and this layer is on top, which is fine. But again, if this layer is on top, then that means that everything that happens here would be on top of here. So if I decided to draw something on top of this, it would appear to be above it. And so if I wanted this layer to be below, I could simply drag it down. I'm going to rename this layer, and I'm going to name it tween. And what tween means is everything in between. So Flash will automatically draw all the things that are in between two states that an object is in. So we're going to demonstrate this and actually do this together. So on this new layer called tween, I'm going to basically make a copy of my old square. So I'm going to use the selection tool here, which is usually the one that's defaulted on. And I'm going to go to my very first keyframe in frame by frame, and I'm going to select this object here, and I'm going to go up to edit copy, and you can also push Control C, and then I'm going to go to my tween keyframe, and I'm going to go to edit paste, or you can push Control V. Paste in place, we'll put it right on top, paste in center, either way. So I'm just going to put place in center. And I'm going to take this and move it underneath my old one so that it's kind of in line with it, but there's a little bit of space here. Just a little gap. About that much is fine. And I'm also going to modify this a little bit. I'm going to go up to Modify and Break Apart. So now it's back to paint. Okay? So I'm going to come over to my colors, and I'm going to choose red for this guy, and then I'm going to turn it back into a symbol, which we did for this one. We talked about symbols already, so we want to modify and convert this back to a symbol, and we're going to name it movie clip, and I'm going to name this one red square, and you can name yours whatever color square it is. Alright. So now what I'm going to do is go through my image, and I'm going to figure out where this thing starts to turn. And it looks like it turns right at frame 20. Frame 20 is when it's at its lowest point. So at frame 20, on my tween layer, I'm going to click right there so that this one's highlighted on my tween layer. And I'm going to create a keyframe. So we can either hit F6 or just right click and go to Insert Keyframe. So now this thing exists on frame 20 and frame 1. Now on frame 20, I'm going to move this so that it's right below my old one with a little bit of space in between. And I'm going to nudge it up with my arrows just a little bit so that it looks like it's about the same amount of space. Yep, this looks like about the same amount of space. You just want a little sliver of space between. Okay, then I'm going to find where it goes up to the corner and starts to move across, or move or turn, rotate. So it starts to rotate at, looks like frame 42-ish. Yeah, that's frame 42. And so on frame 42, I'm going to right click, and create a keyframe, or you can hit F6. And I'm going to move this guy so that it's right below there again. But I'm going to arrow it down so there's a little bit of a gap. Okay. Now my blue square rotates for this amount of this amount of time. It rotates here, 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 and here, and it's finally at its end right here. looks like my square actually stops on this frame right here. This is where it actually reaches its peak. So it stops moving right here. Okay, so this is a good opportunity to show you how to move keyframes because I actually want this keyframe to be right here. So in order to move this keyframe, if I click the keyframe one time, so I've just clicked it. Now if I click, I can drag it over to where I want it to go, and it will change to that position. And it looks like I put it a little bit too far over, so I'm going to click it one more time and move it over one frame so it's right there, so that they're both in line with each other. So this is where it stops, and then it stays there for 2 keyframes, and then it starts to rotate right here. So what I'm going to do is click a keyframe right here, right before it starts to rotate, or click on this frame, and I'm going to right click and go to Insert Keyframe, and it rotates to there. This is where the blue one stops to rotate, so I'm going to make another keyframe right here. Okay, so far we've made keyframes for all the movements that we're going to create. It's going to rotate on this keyframe, so I'm going to rotate it on this keyframe right here because I want it to rotate, but I'm not going to rotate it by steps. I'm going to rotate it all the way 90 degrees like that. Okay, and I'm going to finish this off with tweens later. I'm going to show you what this thing is going to do so far. So in between these two, I'm going to create a classic tween. Okay, so if I right click, I can go up here to where it says classic tween and click, and now you'll see that these both move at the same time. Because what the computer has done is it said it's going to start like this, it's going to end right over here. The computer draws everything in between to make that thing happen. We're going to do the same thing right here. Right click in between. It doesn't matter where, just in between these keyframes at some point on the timeline. If you just right click and go to Create Classic Tween. And so now these things are moving together. Then they stay together, and then one of them is rotating, so I'm going to create a classic tween right here as well. So now they rotate together too. Okay? Now this thing is going to travel, but actually it stays still. So right here it's still, right here the blue thing is still, the blue square is still, right here the blue square is still, and then it starts to move right here. So right before it starts to move, we want to make a keyframe for the red square, and then it's going to move across until it reaches the very end. And so this is going to be where our red square is going to end. I'm going to right click this and create a keyframe, and I'm going to move this across, straight across, until it's lined up underneath the blue one again. And now I'm going to create a classic tween right here as well. So now they move together. So we created the blue square using frame by frame animation, and we've created the red square using tweens. A lot less work using tweens because the computer is actually drawing everything in between. So this is a very nice feature that Flash has done in order to take a lot of the work out of the animation process. Now I'm going to show you one more thing. I've shown you how to move keyframes or move frames. I just want to show you really quickly here. If I wanted to say remove these frames right here so that this red square ends right here and no longer exists, if I simply drag and highlight, I can right click and remove the frames and it'll take them away. So now this thing has nowhere to go, the red square, because there is no keyframe for it to move to. I'm going to undo that. Now another thing that some people have a problem with is that sometimes they'll click and then they'll click again on this frame, and if they move this frame over here, then it'll actually add frames to something. So if I click on this keyframe on accident and then click and move it, it'll move it down there. And so just be careful what you're clicking on, because as soon as you click something, if you click and drag it, then it'll move. I'm going to undo that too. Alright, I'm going to create one more layer, and we're going to create something in that layer. So I'm going to go ahead and hit New Layer. And this layer can be on top. So I'm going to move it on top. And I'm just going to double click this to rename it, and I'm going to name it Rotate. And I'm going to create a movie, like a separate movie, and I'm going to put it on the screen, and I'm going to show you why this is important. If you create individual movie clips, you can insert them into your timeline, and the movie will play over and over again. You can also bring in multiples of that movie. So I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. If I come in here, I'm going to click on my tween first key frame, and I'm going to copy this. Edit copy, and I'm going to put it on this keyframe right here for rotate. So the very first keyframe for my rotate layer, I'm just going to push Control V, or you can go up to Edit Paste. And I'm going to break this apart. Modify, break apart. Okay, so now this is back to a shape. The reason I want to break it apart is because I'm going to choose yet another color. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to choose green. And just choose a different color other than the other two that we've already selected. And I'm going to modify, convert to symbol, and I'm going to name this one green square. And remember what I said before, there's three types of symbols we can create: movie clips, buttons, and graphics. I only ever use movie clip or button. I never use graphic. So we're never going to use graphic. So movie clip is the default. Buttons are specific if you want to click on them. I'm going to click OK. So here's my green square. And I'm going to double click this square. Now what has happened is I've gone inside the square, and if you notice up here this says scene 1, and then now it says green square. We are inside this movie clip, so we're not affecting anything on here. We're only going to affect this square. And notice that our timeline, nothing is there anymore. Sometimes this happens and people freak out because they don't know why none of their stuff is there. If I click back on scene 1, there's my original timeline. So what I want to do is edit this movie. So I'm going to double click it, and now I can create something brand new on this timeline that's different than what's happening on the original timeline. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Modify, Convert to Symbol, and I'm just going to name this Green Square Movie. That way it will be named something different than what it was renamed originally, and it's now a movie clip. Okay, I'm going to have this thing rotate over and over again. And so I'm going to come over here, I'm going to say frame 25. I'm going to right click it and go to Insert Keyframe. And I'm going to take my Rotate tool, and I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. So I'm just going to pull it around until it's 90 degrees rotated. Now if I right click and go to Create Classic Tween, this thing will rotate for 25 squares. Okay? Now this thing will continue to look like it's rotating because it's going to keep moving and moving and moving. I haven't taught you this yet, but there is a way that you can say rotate once and then stop as soon as you get here, but we're going to get into that later. What this thing is going to do is it's just going to keep rotating forever, because it rotates to here, and then it's just going to start over, so it'll look like it's continuously rotating. Okay, I'm going to go back to scene 1, and I'm going to place this right in the corner here, so it's just barely off in the corner right there. Now that we have a movie clip of this rotating, and it's going to rotate for as long as it's on screen, so it's going to rotate all the way up to here, and then it's going to loop again. If we wanted this to stop again, we could, but we're not going to do that yet. Now, we have one movie clip, one of these movie clips on our screen. If I want to put another one in this corner, and it's going to rotate also, if I go up here to the tab where it says Library, I can see all the stuff that I've created so far. If you don't see library, you can go up here and go to Window and then select Library, and then you'll get into the library. Now, the green square is my movie. This is just the thing that's inside my movie. In hindsight, I probably should have named these the opposite, but this is actually the movie right here that we created, green square. So if I pull this on, I can pull on as many of them as I want, and all of them will start rotating. So if I go to Control Test Scene, see I've got all these green squares rotating now. And they're going to continue to rotate forever. So I don't want that many. I only want 2 in the corners. So I'm going to delete these. Just highlight them in backspace. I'm going to move this so it's down in the corner. And to ensure that these 2 are aligned, I'm going to go to Window, Align. And I'm going to highlight both of these and go to my Align here. And I'm going to make sure that they're aligned vertically. So now they're right in place. To demonstrate what that did is, just like in Illustrator, if I highlight both of these objects and go to my Align vertical makes them both in the same place. Now I can move them down to where I want them to be. And now these things will continue to rotate. So let's see what this movie looks like. Okay, so this is good. You can save this and you can turn it in. So go ahead and save it as an FLA, and to turn it in you can go to File, Export, and we're going to export movie. Make sure that you name it correctly, and you're going to save it as an SWF, which is the normal default one. There's a whole bunch of different kinds in here that you can save it as. All the video ones are MOV, GIF, AVI, and SWF. And so we're going to save it as an SWF. If you had sound or anything in them, then sometimes it's better to do them as a different video, but we're going to just save it as an SWF. So name it correctly, period, underscore, last name, underscore, first name, underscore, and then the name of the project, and in this case it'll be Flash Basics. Just name it Flash Basics, and then hit save. Okay?